Everyone's looking to have a better relationship or better friendships, but they're looking for people to fill that situation or void that they're not filling in themselves. So self-love is all about defining how to really care about yourself so that you can care for others. Because if you love yourself, it's not what people think. I think the self-love kind of, if it's not understood correctly, kind of has this term of selfishness. It's actually selflessness. It's learning how to be able to receive love as well as give love, to understand what people need, to be more aware, to be more present. And most importantly, the confidence comes in that as well, because the confidence is the key factor. And if you're confident, then you can have these things happen in your life and you're unshakable in so many situations, because if something doesn't go the way you want, okay, no problem. I can just, I can navigate a different way. But if you're so dependent on other things, then that's not going to, you're going to have a very tumultuous life, and there's going to be a lot of uproar in that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because a lot of times we've talked about self-love, and a lot of people might label that as selfishness. So how would if somebody came up to you and said, you're talking about self-love, and that person said, well, isn't that really selfish? What would you say to them?
I would come back with something along the lines of, well, do you love yourself? Because they probably don't if they have to ask that question. But I would say that it's kind of like any situation where, confidence, if it's not done right, can be considered cockiness. And it's really about, I care about myself so I can care about others. If people tend to be selfish, then they tend to be focused on their own needs and their own wants. They also don't tend to be good at giving and receiving love. So people who are selfless have a lot more understanding for someone, and their concerns and needs tend to be outside rather than always about how can I get instant gratification. Because people often think that their problems are unique, but it's not the problems that are unique, it's the stories. Everyone has problems. It's the same thing with self-esteem or the way you feel about yourself. Everyone needs self-esteem. Everyone needs gratification and validation. It's just some people need it more than others, and that's where the self-love and confidence comes in.
Yeah, and especially too, I think that I've learned a lot about that, again, being in a pastoral role for almost 20 years, and then being in executive positions with two nonprofits here in Fort McMurray, is this having that self-love. In fact, it was interesting, and not so much, and it's interesting too, because when I was a minister, it was not so much, and probably you've heard this expression, JOY, Jesus first, others second, you last. And that's how you find happiness. And actually, I was talking with my pastor. This is a couple of years ago, and he has since left to go. He actually retired back to Nova Scotia, and he said, he says that acronym JOY, and I said, one of the things that I've got a tech person telling me I got to turn down my volume a bit. I think I'm too loud. I get excited and I get too loud. So anyway, it's good to have that tech person on your side. Listen, so anyway, he was talking about the JOY, and he says, I don't believe in that. And it just kind of floored me. He said, he says, Jesus first, others, and then you. He says, you're never going to be able to take care of others if you don't take care of yourself first. And it's certainly, one of the things that we have learned in doing a lot of work with in the social profit world and social workers dealing with clients and so on. If you cannot take care of yourself, if you don't have that self-care or that self-love mindset, you will never be able to help anybody else, or help anybody else effectively, I put it that way.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting you say that, because as a Christian myself, I know that a lot of people in the Christian world tend to think, oh, we should struggle, or Christians need to struggle. Christians need to have this attitude that you can't have abundance or success. And I think that's what holds a lot of people back. depending on how they were raised or what they've been thinking for most of their life, can I have abundance? It's not that somebody else can't. Is it for me? Am I able to after what I want? And it's those tiny, tiny little thoughts or shifts that create us from having something wonderful and incredible happening and something just being mediocre.
Absolutely. No, that's right. Chelsea, you talked about at the beginning of the show some of the things that you've gone through, and again, you're talking about being sexually abused and some of the things that you've gone through with PTSD and having an autoimmune disease. You talk about, or you mentioned briefly, how to heal the pain and get that power and purpose. So you had mentioned too about healing yourself from your own PTSD. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit, what did that PTSD look like, and how did you go about doing that self-healing?
Oh, this is a great question. It's very interesting. I did do a lot of transformational work. I had a coach. I did hire a coach, and I did go see a neurologist for a very long time. I actually got a concussion about a year ago, and it didn't heal properly. So I was seeing a neurologist partially for that. And going through all this stuff, I noticed that the PTSD that I've experienced had been throughout my life. I was abused as a child, and I had gone through the fight or flight response, which is just my normal response. So what I learned how to heal my body through was a series of a compilation of everything, right? It was my faith. It was my ability to learn how to relax. Relaxing was a big one for me. Most people don't really relax. Even when we're on vacation, we're not really doing it, right? So that was very important. Exercising differently, talking to my neurologist, really making sure I had an outlet. And part of healing that PTSD, I'm going to go one step deeper and say, when you do feel like a panic attack is coming on, or when that would be something that I was experiencing, the thing that I would do is I would immediately shift my thoughts. That's not real. What I would say something like that. Or if I started to come into this mode of panic or stress, just completely shifting something and thinking about something positive for 10 to 15 seconds. And I always like to compare muscle memory to brain memory, in the sense of if you're stretching a muscle, you need to stretch a muscle for 10 to 15 seconds minimum. It's the same with your brain. So when you're thinking about something that's causing some sort of trauma, go into positivity, go into a good memory for 10 to 15 seconds. It actually helps you shift out of that quicker, and you can control your mindset. And just to give you one more tip with that, most of us only have, I believe it's about 10 to 12 minutes of pain from something, and then the rest is self-inflicted. So each time we have a memory or we have a moment of PTSD, it's because we're remembering something from the past. It's just about healing your brain. It's about healing the thoughts and the memories that come up. So that's how I healed it. It's immediately shifting into positivity when pain comes up.
Did you find it easy at first, or is it more so, it's a process that you have to go through and do you still have to go through that process?
Oh, it's definitely a process. I would say it's pretty easy now. It's not near as tough as when I was younger. I mean, there have been times where total breakdown, right? You're having a panic attack in your car or on the freeway or something more dangerous or more serious, and that I think happens to a lot of people, and they don't even realize that they have some form of PTSD, something stressing them out, traffic, whatever. So when I first started going through that, I would usually just let the panic attack or let the stress come at me, where now I just shut it down before it happens. So that's probably the difference. And yes, it still comes up. I think that we're always works in progress, and part of being able to handle emotions is letting yourself feel emotion and not beating yourself up for having pain from something, and not even that you haven't healed the pain, because that's, I believe 100% you can, but able to let go of the feeling that associates with that, and knowing that you're okay, and knowing that your life can be incredible and amazing.
One of the things that really caught, I just wrote this down, is, and I've heard this a number of times, that we are works in progress. And I think a lot of times people feel that at a certain point that there's not anything else that you can teach me. It can be kind of a two-pronged thing. One is, I'm just not smart enough to learn anything else, or some people are so full sometimes, I think, of themselves that they think, well, I've arrived. But
Right.
this is one of the things that I've always learned, and I think this is where I am today. And I was telling somebody that I just turned 60 in May, and I feel like I'm just starting. I just that I still am a work in progress, and things are happening, and things that I've got to learn, and more things that I got to do. So I just kind of picked up on that. If you're listening tonight, you are a work in progress, no matter what age you are. That we should always be learning and taking in new information and processing new stuff, and being a person that wants to better themselves.
100%. And that's the thing. Something that my grandma said that I always loved was, life is about lessons. That every single day we have the opportunity to be brand new. And at the end of your course of your life, if you learn the lessons, that's the most beautiful thing. Because that's what it's about, right? All the things we go through. There's just personal growth to help us learn these lessons. So I always love that, and I really like to take that into everything I do.
That's fantastic. You touched on this a little bit beforehand, but I want to dig a little bit deeper with this here, Chelsea. Is you talk about, and I've mentioned too as well, that self-love starts the basis of every relationship you have. So if you could, dig a little bit deeper with that one, in the sense that let me put it this way, your journey to self-love, and how if you're, for instance, you're in a group, how would you talk about that self-love, and how that relates to relationship with others?
Oh, okay. Great question. So the thing about self-love, kind of what I was saying earlier, is that it's the attitude of that you don't care what people think, but you have this desire to give to other people, because you have like your love tank, or your your fuel in your emotions, that gives you that ability to do so. The thing is, most of us walk around either dead inside, or there's some sort of emotional something that is causing people to hold back. I think I just read the other day that the number one fear is fear of failure, and the second or third one next to death is fear of intimacy. So people are afraid of failing all the time, and they're afraid of having relationships because, oh no, what if this turns out the same way as last time? What if I had the same experience? What if they're just like my ex? So that happens with romantic relationships, also with friendships. I mean, you could lose some friends and have a situation where you're like, oh, I'm 5 or 45. How do I make friends now? So we're constantly wanting to connect with people. That's the number one thing that people desire, is they want connection, and they want to feel accepted, and they want to know that they're good enough. So I would say the biggest thing out of all of that is finding your reason for why you do what you do, and then work backwards, reverse engineer the process. Meaning, why do you do what you do? Then go one step further. Who do you do it for? And then ask more questions like, why do I love myself, or why don't I love myself? And oftentimes we know the answer. We're just afraid to either admit it to ourselves, or we want someone to agree or to validate us.
No, you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that I've learned over life is that the two things that you had mentioned, people want to have that sense of being connected. They want to have that sense of belonging. They want to have that sense of being loved for who they don't have to change themselves to be loved. And as I was actually being interviewed somebody asked me, said, so what makes your coach